Hey guys, it's Adam. I hope you're doing lovely. Welcome to Do You Watch Anime, a show where I sit down with a guest every week and ask them, Do you watch anime? And we go from there. And today joining me is voice director in such anime as Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, VTuber Legend, and Cherry Magic. Jason Lord, how are you today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good. So, do you watch anime?
I do. In fact, I've been an avid anime watcher since back in the days when you had to order them on DVD off of Netflix or going to Suncoast to buy the VHS tapes. So
Damn.
very, very familiar with the the medium.
Yeah. So, what were some of the first anime you kind of dipped your toe into?
Right. So obviously, I had similar gateway animes like most people did. I
Mhm.
grew up watching Dragon Ball Z. It's
Of
usually one of
course.
the first ones I saw. I do
Yeah.
vaguely remember watching Voltron when I was younger, but I did
Okay.
it never processed,
Mhm.
registered to me that that was anime. I just thought it was another Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
Um, but around the time I started becoming more interested in anime, I was watching shows like Trigun, Real Bout High
Well,
School.
yeah.
Um, I think Yu Yu Hakusho was coming out, being distributed around that time. And I remember watching those a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So, what's a show that you could watch over and over and over again and not get sick of?
Probably G Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam, G Gundam. Yeah.
Damn. Okay. Why G Gundam?
It's one of the biggest deviations from the show up until that point.
Mhm.
Gundam is supposed to be this show about classism and warfare and disparity between those who live on Earth and in space. And granted, they do touch on those themes, but this was a one where like martial arts was involved. Not so much that the pilots themselves just fought and did martial arts, but the whole point
Yeah.
was that you fought with your Gundam. You had like a
Mhm.
virtual one-to-one suit that you wore, and the machine copied your movement, and it was just really interesting to see that dynamic change, and it kind of really opened up for them to in some ways kind of cool, in other ways maybe slightly offensively portray different countries via
Yeah.
a Gundam that represented them. So I
Yeah.
always found that to be like a good sign that the show, the concept itself didn't take itself too seriously, and they were open to really exploring different ideas with the IP. That also served as a huge gateway point for me in terms of like getting the models and building the models. I had the
Mhm.
entire G Gundam set when I was in middle school. So, but that's back when they cost like $5 a pop. Nowadays,
Yeah.
you really got to pay a pretty penny if you want to get any of them, I think.
Yeah. Oh my god, I love that. So, what are besides G Gundam, what are some of your favorite anime in general?
I've gone through a lot of different phases with like the types of shows that I enjoy. I usually just try to think about the ones that I remember being young and like have the most like experience with. Like I can always
Mhm.
go back to and enjoy. So like Outlaw Star was one that I was a huge fan
Okay.
of. Just the overall dynamic of the show and the way that everything came together was cool, and it had a really awesome opening
Yeah,
soundtrack.
it did.
Usually, I can remember most of these shows from like the really stellar introductory music, and I'm glad that when they did show them over in the States, they didn't like get rid of that. They didn't like
Yeah.
try to localize the song. They just focused on the show.
Mhm.
Um, so I was a big fan of that show. I'm a huge Metabots fan. Essentially, any
Yes. Let's
any any
go. Yeah.
show that has something to do with robots or mecha, I'm all about it. So
Yeah.
I'd watch Big O.
Okay, yeah.
I was even into the IGPX on Toonami when it came
Oh my
out.
god.
Even though
Yeah.
that was like a co-production, it was still
Mhm.
it's still people and robots doing cool stuff. So it was
It's
pretty fun.
true. Yeah. Oh my god, I love that. So, obviously you directed the Gundam Witch from Mercury. How was it like as being a Gundam fan getting that opportunity to do that?
It was something else,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell people that, like I am an enthusiast of anime, but at the same time, I sort of I want to say this the right way. I don't tend to fanboy over things, right?
Okay, yeah,
Because in this case, I was already fanboying when the show came out because it's like, oh,
yeah,
it's set in a different universe and it's a completely different story, and that's so cool. And obviously the production is through the roof, right? So I had an opportunity as a fan to really sort of geek out about that. But when it came time for me to the responsibility was on me to sort of bring the help bring the English version around. I kind of switched from being more of like a real fan of the property to really like having a respect for it and being like, okay, I gotta approach this now in a way that 10-year-old me would have watched it and wanted to say like, yeah, it's one of my favorite shows I've ever done. And in a way it helps too that we weren't too hamstringed by previous Gundam properties because it's an alternate universe. So we could basically start with a clean slate.
yeah.
All the basic stuff is still there. There are mobile suits. What powers them is different. The politics are different. But the overall theme is there. It's the idea of how do you process trauma brought on by family relations, classist relationships, corporate overlords being terrible, and then obviously the ever encroaching fear that war will extend beyond Earth into space where you can't escape it anywhere. um,
Hmm.
so that just kind of feeling of like, wow, I have a hand in this is like part of history now.
Yeah.
It is definitely sort of like a standout moment for me that made me feel like really fulfilled as a creative, I would say.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm just glad I was able to geek out beforehand because I'm always trying to keep like my finger on the pulse when it comes to goofy shows like that. Like my interests and proclivities when it comes to anime is pretty eclectic. So like I like what I like and I don't like what I don't. So
No, that's valid. Yeah, totally. And like, what has been kind of like your favorite, like kind of behind the scenes moment from working on Witch from Mercury?
I think for me, the behind the scenes is it's happened a number of times, but I would say that it's twofold. It's one where we would be coordinating getting an actor in for a particular role, and in some cases they would know it was Gundam they were coming in for, but they had no idea what it was for, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
and I had a real opportunity to get a lot of you know newer talent that hadn't had a chance to really sort of step into more responsibility with that, and that took a lot of time and a lot of adjudicating and making sure like, yeah, this is a great show and it's a great opportunity. It's not just like a anybody can be in on it.
Yeah.
So having those people come in and then you have that moment where they realize not only is it Gundam but I'm playing this character, wow, that's really fun. um,
Hmm.
I think the other thing that was really stand out for me is, and what makes the entire job so enjoyable for me, is creating those emotional moments through collaboration with the actors, right? Sometimes, all parties really like to do their research and dive in, and they kind of know what they're getting into beforehand. I mean, it's part of my job to sort of have that research under my belt. So I kind of understand what I'm hoping to do with an episode or a premise beforehand, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the actor's responsibility to do that. Um, but regardless if they have or have not, when we reach those high pitch moments where it's like, this is going to be heavy, like emotionally, navigating that with the actors. And then when we finally hit that one take and we play it back and it's like, that's the one. I think those have been some really, goosebumpy moments for me where it's, we've really hit an adrenaline, emotional, euphoric kind of high where it's like all of these pieces are coming together and it just makes a really good show. And
Yeah.
for me, behind the scenes, that's kind of what I think of. A lot of funny, goofy stuff, yeah, for sure. But I mean, really, it's being able to recognize the importance of a show, whether that be from the message it's giving or the emotional impact, and being able to, you know, understand that and sort of translate it and transform it in a way so that Americans can really understand and feel with it in the way that they that I would hope most other people can in various regions. So we
Yeah.
have our own unique take on that, and I had a hand in that, and that makes me feel really fulfilled in that way.
Hmm. Yeah. And one of my favorite parts about the series is how grounded the performances are. They feel like really, really like just real, like real people. Sometimes anime can feel, just like a cartoon,
Mhm.
but like Witch from Mercury hit that perfectly. And what from a director's point of view, what kind of went into making those decisions with the characters?
So a lot of that is establishing right from the beginning, especially with not just the team you're working with, but the actors. Like what your goal is for the show. There
Yeah.
have been shows I've gotten where ideally we're saying things like, yeah, we want it to feel like Saturday morning where you're chomping on cereal and you're having fun. You can just turn your brain off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
With Gundam, I think the chief word we were looking for was we really wanted a cinematic approach to what was happening, which
Okay. Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the dialogue needs to feel natural. And in a way to do that, it's a matter of like communicating with the actors when we go scene by scene. It's not just about talking about what the feel of the scene is, but also trying to get them comfortable enough in the booth where it's like there's no pressure, just act, right?
Yeah.
I will say a lot of it is not all down to the director. Sometimes I will say that we were handed a tremendous amount of ability to do that through the visual storytelling of the animators and
Oh yeah.
the pacing of the story, the directing of the storyboarding and the moment to moment action made it very easy for the actors to assume these moments, whether they be comedic or emotional. And so the information was all there that they needed it. We just needed to find the right moment and the right pace and feel to get into it. So it was sort of like a case by case basis, but really the big flag we were waving that around that was meant to be cinematic in a sense. And the closer we could get to that, the closer we could have that more raw, real type sound that most people are not accustomed to seeing in most anime that they watch. I think that gives us a much different, more pleasing viewing experience with that type of show.
Hmm. Yeah, I watched it. Oh my god, I want to say like a year ago, like binged it, and oh my god, it was just so good. And oh my god, um, so now that the show's over, technically, what has been kind of your favorite moment in the series, like that either like in the anime? Sorry.
Um, there are a few moments that I feel are that get me every time. I think there are two in particular, and they have to do with maybe there's three, honestly. Okay, so if I were to go in order of
Yeah.
moments that I really enjoy, there's a moment in season two where unfortunately part of a larger scheme, Miorine has to sabotage um, one of Suleta's fights in order for the position of the holder to go from her to someone else, and so that the
Yeah.
Gundam can be given up.
Hmm.
And we knew at the end of that's a moment that character Suleta like never experienced before. So the final moments of realizing that everything was being taken away from her, and that performance that Jill gave,
Yeah.
it gets me every time. It's really good. And we weren't so much trying to like copy what the Japanese was doing, but we definitely tried to get across this idea of like we gotta push it. It's gotta break some emotional barriers there, and it needs to feel like raw, like a raw nerve got pinched. um, the other one I think would be the fight between Guel and Shadik in the later
Yes.
half of season two.
Yeah.
That one was really fun,
Hmm.
especially the dynamic between Bradley Gareth and Alejandro Saab was fantastic. But I think the standout moment definitely was Bradley.
Yeah.
I think the amount of energy that he brought that character, especially for the change in his personality and his overall character arc, or it really spoke a lot to the development of that character. And I don't think anybody else could have really translated that as perfectly in my mind as Bradley could have.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously the only other one that I really think is just stand out is there's a lot of moments where the two main leads get to have sort of very intimate moments between one another. But there's
Hmm.
definitely one, I forget if it's season one or season two. It's probably somewhere in the space between those two. We're at a space station and they give chase because Soletta's feeling insecure about her place in the group, and
Yeah.
Yorine chases after her, and we get this funny, yakety sax type chase scene moment. But then they have this really, thoughtful, warm, intimate moment, together where it's basically revealed the type of relationship that they have and what they really mean to one another. And not only is it refreshing to see that in the show, but it's also very heartbreaking to see how that sets the tone for the betrayal and moving into season two, I would say.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
most people would tell you that their standout moment, and people have told me this 100 times, and it's basically when the very end of season one. Everyone
Yeah.
always asks me like, "How'd you feel about her killing a man in cold blood?" I'm just like, war do be like that
It's
sometimes.
yep.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Gu- Guel at first, I was like, this asshole.
Mhm.
I get him off my screen, and then like by the end of the series, I was like, I love you so much. Like, oh my god, yeah. Bradley did a fantastic job, and yeah, it was just so good. So speaking of amazing anime that you direct, VTuber Legend needs more people viewing VTuber Legend, because it was straight up one of the funniest shows I've ever watched. How was it directing a comedy like that?
there there are layers to it. So I am this is the funniest thing is sometimes you'll be thrown a curveball like a show like that.
Yeah,
And I enjoy the challenge of shows like that where it's like, how are we going to make this work, right? One of my chief things that I worry about, not so much to say worry about, but definitely like to take the challenge of, is really trying to translate the cultural barrier between what is funny in Japanese culture and what is funny in American culture. And
yeah,
sometimes we're able to sort of thread that needle pretty well. Sometimes we kind of don't have a lot of opportunity to do that, just the way a show is presented. So in this case, the foreign idea was not so much that they were VTubers, which was a thing that I was extremely unfamiliar with. So that obviously meant I got to get someone in here who knows a thing or two about VTubing. And thankfully
yeah,
enough, there were plenty of voice actors in the ecosystem who also did VTubing. So they understand this humor and they
yeah.
can help explain it to me when my deep dives don't work as well.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, working on that show was really interesting because it definitely had a lot of shock value on the drop, right?
Yeah.
I was a bit, concerned about like the tone we were setting in the first episode. Is like, is this going to be the entire season? So if
Yeah.
that was in fact the case, it was going to be like this is going to be like it's going to be risque, but in like a fun kind of way.
Yeah.
Um, I think just sort of letting everybody understand and absorb and channel the absurdist nature of the show was really what made it fun to do that kind of
Hmm.
work. I think
Yeah.
we take a really dumb concept that was already funny in Japanese, and we have to say, how can we make this just as, if not even funnier? And I think the actors knocked it out of the park every opportunity they had, and there was no I think what really helped was that there was no sheepishness among the cast. When we brought them in and I basically told them, "Hey, here's what we're doing." Everyone was all hands on deck. They were ready. They were ready to do all the cussing. They were ready
Yeah.
to do all that type of stuff, which
Yeah.
bleeping things in and of itself is very funny too, I would
Yeah.
add. So part of the process was like, okay, what are we bleeping here? What specifically are we bleeping about this?
Yeah.
Um, so that was pretty fun. It was
Mhm.
definitely different, and I think that sort of helped us lean into it because if you can't beat them, you should just join them.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. So like what's what's a line that you guys put in or that you can't believe just like made it in because there are a lot of ones where I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. God, I gotta. There are a few. I mean, the first episode kind of outdoes itself in terms
Yeah.
of the having a press conference talking about rubbing one out. That was pretty interesting, I would say.
Yep.
Um, we were even like I was even in debate of like, is that something that even needs to be bleeped out? I don't know. I got
Yeah.
to ask somebody about this. The stop making mommy goon to use type stuff. That type of language, I think is
Yeah.
hilarious. I think there's one particular line. I don't know why it hits me so hard every time, but at some point in the season, the main character Awayuki introduces like a new variant of her VTuber,
Yeah.
and she is very slowly describing the different elements of it and at one point we wrote in the script, we described her because she would wear socks with no shoes, and
Yeah.
the phrase specifically was a pair of shoeless grippers, and like that right there, they knew exactly how to hit those comedic moments every single time. And sometimes I would come in thinking, how are they going to do this? Like,
Yeah.
I could explain it five different ways, but really what I should be telling myself is, how are they not going to do it? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like you could literally give them anything and they could make it funny. So I never really had that fear like it wasn't going to be funny. It was more so
Mhm.
just like I don't know how this is going to end, but it'll probably be good. So
Yeah.
the standouts probably have to be those things, but there are so many. If I just went back and looked, I could probably just check all of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So how would you pitch to someone who hasn't seen VTuber Legend? How would you pitch the anime to them?
If I were to try to get someone on board, I would
Yeah.
essentially say it's basically anime girls gone wild with microphones. Is really what it is.
Yeah.
Um, it's essentially letting your intrusive thoughts win on the internet with no one there to shame you. And I think, when you kind of see just what these characters get down to, and
Mhm.
apparently what the crowd and the chat is down for, based
Yeah.
off all the messages coming throughout the show. I guess it really shows this idea of like, hey, if you're into like really absurdist humor and you don't mind watching people fly their freak flags, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it was straight up. I think I've shown it to like so many friends because I was like, you need to watch this. It's hilarious and so good. Oh my god. So you also direct Cherry Magic, which again was one of my favorites. How awesome was it being able to dub a BL, but not just a BL about adults?
It was interesting. I when we got down to the process of, we start doing research and we figure out what we want to do with something. At first, my first thought when I see a show, I always look at the title and I think, is this show as dumb as it sounds? And that's not to disparage any show. Some of them have
Yeah.
really wacky names, but
Oh yeah.
the fact that Cherry Magic also has an extra subtitled part to it and it ends in a question mark, I'm pretty sure,
Yep.
like makes you a
Yeah.
wizard question mark.
Yep.
Um, it was pretty funny because the opportunity that it presented was, it was a regular story when you don't add the mind reading component to it.
Mhm.
It's just, how do you navigate being infatuated with someone regardless of what those circumstances are, right? Especially with like a more shut in, let's say sullen shy type character like the
Mhm.
main character. um,
Yeah.
and essentially watching grown adults navigate that while still kind of allowing those more immature types of emotions to sort of grow and formulate, I think is what made the show special for me.
Mhm.
um, I know in the past, back when it was Funimation and we were putting out, I shouldn't say we because I wasn't there around that time, but I really appreciated the fact that around the time when shows like that were premiering, the concept was to show the normalcy of what this type of romance was. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes love looks like this, I think is what the slogan was.
Hmm.
Um, in this case, what I think was interesting about working on a show like this, especially because they call it a BL, but it's grown adults, right?
Yeah.
You know, so watching that navigation and seeing how the maturity factor of it plays into it. It's not like two high schoolers falling in love. It's two men who work at the same job. One of them has extreme insecurities, and the other one, though very confident in his abilities and what he can do, there is only one thing that paralyzes him with fear, and it's the idea that he won't be able to love the person he's attracted to, because the circumstances of it. And doing a show that has a really strong message that says, regardless of what those factors are, however they show up, it is entirely possible for you to find happiness in that type of way. And whether you realize it or not, a lot of people are rooting for you and will be happy for you to find that happiness.
Hmm.
um, Aside from that, I think it was really fun to just explore the story itself, right? Because
Hmm.
my one of my goals is to make sure that every attempt at a show is genuine, right? It's like we obviously, you if you're passionate about something, trying to phone it in, and not, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but like, just because you don't engage with the concept, or you might not be as familiar or learned on the concept, doesn't mean you can't contribute something to it. Like, if you put an honest effort towards it, an earnest effort towards it, and you work to find that balance and that clarity with the people who are more in the know about those types of, let's say, scenarios, or that type of orientation, I think everybody comes out the better at the end of it. So I thought that was a great opportunity for me to really follow along with these actors and figure out, like, oh yeah, this is kind of how, this romantic element works between two adults, especially two gay adults who, work in corporate Japan. So
Yeah.
sort of figuring that out and making sure we understand, like, what the genuine emotional beat of it. I think that's the funnest part of that particular project.
Hmm. Yeah, and like, because we picked it up because I saw the title and I was like, "Excuse me," and and it turned out to be literally, oh my god, I'm a big romance anime fan, um, and so this just hit all the dots. It's about adults, and it was absolutely fantastic. And so, what was kind of your favorite moment from Cherry Magic?
I think if I want to look at it from the show
Hmm.
standpoint, like
Yeah.
specifically, like, oh, that's a great moment from like
Hmm.
a storytelling element. It's when it's revealed that the entire premise of the show, maybe it might not be accurate to say it's incorrect, but the revelation that your mind reading doesn't go away simply because you've been deflowered or whatever. Well, that's not the right word to say.
Yeah.
When you do your business and you hit that point in your life,
Yeah.
the reality was that Adachi lost the ability to read Kurosawa's mind, because he opened up and he allowed himself to be loved by Kurosawa, right? So I think that's the realization that the show was trying to tell us, which is like, oh yeah, it's not this very hyper specific thing. It's this idea of, this guy needs to grow in a way, or he needs to become the best version of himself, and to be able to do that,
Hmm.
he needs to feel comfortable in his own skin.
Yeah.
So the affectation that he has disappears once he realizes that, oh, I do love this guy and he loves me for who I am. I don't need to feel like I can't be loved by somebody. And I think that's really the standout moment for me. And especially really good that they saved that for like near the end of
Yeah.
the show, because that really does build up this sort of like, you go back and you think, oh, aha, if only he had just done that sooner. But that just shows how hard it is to navigate,
Hmm.
those types of romantic feelings and emotions that you might have with somebody.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Steve Yurko.
And I'm Tara Sands. Now available from Maji Media is our new podcast, 4Kids Flashback. 4Kids is the company who brought you the English dub of Pokemon in the late 90s and so many other shows like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Shaman King, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Kirby, the infamous One Piece dub, and so many more.
We'll be talking to the people who worked at 4Kids. Actors, directors, writers, editors, producers, engineers, you get the point. And hopefully get the answers to questions both you and I have about the company.
I actually worked there as a voice actor on some of the shows.
And I was a kid watching the shows and remember way more than Tara does.
And thank God for that. Steve is actually a professional storyboard artist, which gives some really unique insights into anime and animation. Subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts. That's the number 4 Kids Flashback.
Hey guys, welcome to the Patreon portion of today's episode. And if you want to join the Patreon, there are a few different tiers, like shoutouts on the episodes, as well as exclusive videos and behind the scenes content and so much more, and even the episode a day early. Thank you to Gio, Keith, Blythe, Bunny, Mikey, Sheba, and Brooke. And if you want to join the Patreon or find out more, the link will be down below. And yeah, back to the episode. Oh my god, I just love the show so much, and it was just so good. So how did you originally get into directing or just acting in general?
Um, it's kind of interesting. I tell people this often. So my background is actually in music education.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with acting. My master's degree is in wind conducting, and that's essentially where you wave your hands in front of an ensemble so that music comes out at the right time, makes the right sounds and stuff.
Yeah.
I had been doing that for a number of years, and that's around the same time, between my bachelor's and my master's, that I got an interest in doing voice acting, because I would joke around with friends and we'd do voices, and it always starts as sort of like a check out this cool weird niche thing that I can do. Hey, I can kind of sound like this guy, right?
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening is, because I'm also sort of a techie as far as audio is concerned, I had recording equipment, right? So those paths kind of intersected, and at one point I started finding auditions for things, and I would just record on a crappy computer microphone and work my way up from there. Really the turning point, I think, for me is there was an indie video game that I had tried out for, and then I joined the cast for. It was called Freedom Planet. And basically it was like an homage to old school, like fast running platformers like Sonic.
Okay, yeah.
And that was the first major role that I had. I played one of the villains, or at least side villains, in that game. And what that did is it opened me up to an entire world of other people, other actors. And I started learning more and conversing with them. And that was, all while I was trying to do this specific career of like music education and doing, things like that. So in a way, those things kind of sort of mesh together into this idea of, perhaps I'm just a design guy. Maybe I'm a big picture guy, and I look at things and I say, hey, I feel like this might be good suit over here, or I'm going to, draw up this design, or I'm going to put this particular program together. The idea of directing, to me, is just someone who knows what they want, and they know the proper channels to be able to get that in the most efficient way. So being a conductor, being a music educator, already helped me with that, because you essentially have to coordinate an entire program, whether it be music or what you're teaching people. So being able to set the groundwork for that and make sure everyone gets to the finish line, no matter what pace or speed they go, it's almost like a perfect set to sort of launch you into that type of work. What really switched it up is when, before, it was after I was done with the music sort of oriented stuff. And before I got in with Crunchyroll, I was doing audio branding. So I was working for a company out in Chicago called PHMG. And essentially it was audio design. It was creating ad spots for companies. It was, recording voice actors and writing copy and meeting with clients and designing audio, experiences for their business, right? So that's kind of like this weird sort of adjacent similar thing to what's happening over here in the anime realm. The difference is there's no real like visual components and there's no storytelling to speak of.
Yeah.
So I got a couple of years of experience being able to manage talent specifically and also figuring out what sounds good from like an audio visual standpoint. From there, I feel like my skills kind of, aligned with what they were looking for in a directing position over at Crunchyroll. So, from that point on, I approached them with that opportunity. And then, I've been with the company for the last almost 3.5 years. So, essentially for me, it's a very weird zigzaggy kind of thing
Yeah.
where it's like, I feel like what has set me up for success has been a wide range of experiences that have all coalesced into this, being a people person and kind of being open to exploring things, but knowing how to communicate with people in a way so that no matter what comes down the pipeline, we're able to try and create a pleasing experience with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. That's crazy. Just the whole, just,
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God. So, what is kind of, what's a moment in your career so far that has made you kind of go, I'm exactly where I need to be?
I don't know. That's a really interesting question because I tend to not dwell on those kinds of things. Like I remember
Okay. Yeah.
specific moments that I have that like felt good, like working with actors and things like that. As far as like having like a retrospective moment or an introspective moment where it's like, yeah, this is exactly right. I kind of feel like that every day. I have moments like that where I feel like, oh yeah, I wouldn't be doing anything else. It's the
Yeah.
right place, right time, and it just so happens to be Wednesday this month. You know what I mean? It's just, when I go in each day and we go through the process of, how are we going to tackle this scene today? What are we going to do that's going to make this moment unique? And how am I going to communicate with people to, get everyone on the same page? Or how am I going to field ideas from other people? How are we going to pull all this together? How can I be a part of that? I think every time I step into the room with other people, whether it be actors or other people who work at Crunchyroll, everyone who has a hand in making this happen, I think that's where I feel the most, at home. I don't need like one or two like standout moments to remind me, yeah, this is all good. It kind of happens to me on a daily basis,
Yeah.
And I think it's because a lot of the people that I work with, they bring that same enthusiasm where it's like, we're here to get the job done, but we also really enjoy the work that we do. So it really does feel like a never work a day in your life kind of situation because there's always, some type of moment that I can have with a coworker or with an actor that just reminds me, this is the place where I'm at. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah. Oh my God. And like that's what you hope for, really, right? Right? So like, oh my God, I love that. So how has your relationship changed since starting at Crunchyroll from like watching it as like a fan to becoming like working in anime?
I don't think there's been much of a change. To be perfectly honest,
Yeah.
my demeanor is, some would call it very reserved. Like I I would say that if anything, I have more of a production oriented eye, right? So one thing that people notice about me is that I'm a huge nitpicker when it comes to continuity errors, right? If
Yeah.
anything, being in the director's chair and having to stare at footage much longer than I normally would as like an enthusiast of it has
Yeah.
only heightened that to the nth degree. Where it's a point at which that's like it almost becomes like joke fodder for us, where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, she's not holding the sword in the same hand that she was in the previous scene, right? And that's not knocking anybody, but it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
you start seeing just how much it takes to make a cohesive product like this. And even when you've got your best people behind it and you're doing all that stuff, you just see like, wow, there are so many moving parts here. And just when you notice things like that, it kind of shows you that big picture. I don't think I was as privy to the big picture when I was more of just like an enthusiast. I never thought to myself, how much does it take to get something like this to print? How many hours does it take to go frame by frame and do this? How much time does it come up with, does it take to come up with a concept like that? How do you find the right voice for this? How do you pace this out so the story makes sense by the time you reach the twist? And for crying out loud, how do you make it happen for more than a season?
Yeah.
It's I think what's really changed is my appreciation for the amount of like blood, sweat, and tears it takes to make stuff like this happen.
Oh yeah.
And how, when it all comes down to it, it's a monumental achievement of teamwork. Beforehand, when I was younger, I was just like, wow, I don't know where this comes from or how they do it, but I'm having a great time. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
But then I try to think to myself, God, if I gave myself the task of like, if I went back to Yu Yu Hakusho and I said, draw 4 frames of this scene, I would pull my hair out because I would have no
Yeah.
idea where to start. I wouldn't know proper shot composition. I just, you know what I mean? So the level of respect that I have for the medium has only grown, and it really helps ground me in a way that, I think it's given me a stronger appreciation, not just for the genre, but like the art itself, animation, directing, everything that goes into it. I think it really has just sort of supercharged my perspective on that and the people involved with it.
Yeah, yeah. 100%. Like since starting this, like I now before as a fan, I was like, yeah, it's anime, it's great, blah blah blah. And now I know like how much work clearly goes into it from the animators to the voice actors to the Japanese voice actors to everyone on staff. Like it's insane how anything gets done. But yeah, it's oh my god, I love that. So if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself at the beginning of your audio career, what would you tell yourself?
Uh, that's funny. I'd probably say something to the effect of, get those figures and those cards and those models while you can. That's really
Yep.
honestly what I would tell myself. Um, I don't know. That's an interesting question because I don't
Mhm.
really think anything would change so much for me. Anime has had a hand in shaping kind of who I am as a person, but it's one particular star in the constellation that makes up, me in particular.
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, if I were to go back and talk to myself, most fans around the time that I was a fan, there was always this sort of lightly implied stigma that if you watch that kind of content, you're kind of different or you're weird or you're not cool because
Yeah.
it's a foreign thing. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that there were times where I didn't explore as much of it as I could have
Mhm.
because I maybe either worried or wondered is like, is it weird of me to watch this type of stuff? And
Mhm.
what I would probably say is to embrace as much as you can, because it's that type of different media that will help shape you, and make you think differently.
Mhm.
And if I were to be a little bit more realist about it, I would say I'd probably tell my younger self too to have more respect for physical media as well. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that VHS that you have there, that DVD that you have there, that hang on to it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
don't discount the idea that a piece of media like that can be special to you in the same way that any other memento could be. And you never know, you might not ever be able to get something like that again in the future, the more digital media starts encroaching on us. So probably those two things:
Yeah.
watch more, hang on to more stuff if it's special to you.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that. So, is there a genre of anime that you haven't gotten to direct yet that you would love to direct?
that's difficult. I feel like I've kind of dipped my toes into
Yeah.
everything. Because I'm trying to think too. We've done action, we've done comedy, we've done romance. Um, I would say, if anything, probably the one that I haven't really dived into has just been a really slow burn slice of life type show. You know, most of my shows have seemed to have some kind of either romantic or comedic element to it, and if it's not that, it's usually just your standard fare, like isekai type stuff, which
Yeah.
the tropes can be somewhat samey, but they all have their own uniqueness to it. But like a
Yeah.
show, basically, I haven't done like a Seinfeld anime where nothing really happens.
Yeah.
And the idea is like the day to day lives of people. I feel
Mhm.
like that could be really interesting, take a shot at something like that.
Yeah.
Um, I think the closest I ever came to something like that was probably a Sign of Affection, but
Yeah.
that first and foremost is a shojo anime and not
Mhm.
so much slice of life. But I think the way they balance that, I got a taste of what it could be like when it's like, yeah, man, it's just laid back and cozy. It's
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind doing another season of that, uh,
Oh, yeah.
but strictly just let's hang around and let's just do stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my god. um, A Sign of Affection is actually my favorite romance manga ever. So how was it taking on a story like that with a person with disabilities?
Hmm. Definitely one of the first things is just consideration of like the point of the show is to
Mhm.
explore that idea, right?
Yeah.
So wanted to be as respectful of that concept as possible. At the same time, that was another instance. And I think I don't remember if we were working on Gundam at the same time we were doing that, or if we had just finished Gundam. But we
Mhm.
carried over a similar idea of like we want a cinematic feel to this show. Like
Yeah.
we want the emotions to feel small yet big at the same time, right? Um, so I think the goal there was sort of like this maximizing the soft spokenness of it, and then also trying to appreciate what the show was essentially getting across, which is another way of saying no matter how you know this type of romance or love that you have for somebody, however you encounter it, it is possible for you to make that happen or for you to find that kind of happiness. I think the interesting part of that show in particular is, you can't really compare it to a whole lot of other shows, right?
Yeah.
The closest I think that comes to that would be, I think a silent voice is a similar
Mhm.
concept. The difference between the two is we get much more of the internal monologue of the main female character there. So we do get to explore a lot more of like what that life is like from that mindset.
Mhm.
So it was really interesting for us to sort of figure out this idea of like, well, what would someone like this, what would their internal monologue be like? What are they insecure about and what do they think about? And I think the great thing about that show and what ultimately became one of my favorite parts about it was showing how there's literally no difference between this college student and everyone around her. The disability has no impact on her ability to live a good life or be a good person or pursue the things that she wants. In
Yeah.
fact, she kind of excels at finding her happiness in spite of that, which I think
Mhm.
is a great message that that can come across with the show, regardless of the romantic element of it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's straight up like literally my favorite romance manga. And um when like when I was first reading it, I was like, oh my god, like the even the text is different, a different font from like her inner monologue to people speaking, normally. And um how everyone handled that like kind of shift was just so good. And like, oh, I love that anime and manga so much. And yeah, I just think it's so important. And yeah, and it's just so good. um so before we go, what has been kind of the hardest lesson that you've learned since starting at Crunchyroll?
There are a few of those that come around, but
Yeah.
they are. Some of them are more like personal, like to yourself kind of lessons that you figure out. I think for me, the hardest lesson that you can learn, especially when you work in this kind of field, is that you can't make everybody happy. I think truly, and you can almost do that with almost any creative field. Um, I love anime fans. I love how passionate they are, and I respect their opinions and their the subjectivity that comes with it. Um, Sometimes I know people express how disheartening it can be, where it's like you're putting out something and you're putting your heart and your soul into it, but just because you feel like that's the best version of that, that doesn't mean everyone has to be, like in lockstep with you, and everyone's entitled to an opinion. I think that's the hardest thing I had to learn, which was just like yeah, to me as a director, this is just my subjective opinion about how this show should sound and what type of way we should take it. But just because I feel that way doesn't mean it's going to resonate with everybody. I have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I feel like part of this job and what makes it difficult is that you have people who are very passionate about the material. And you have to try to find a way to bridge that gap between what your creative vision is and sort of what they're hoping to get out of that experience. I think that's one of the most difficult things to do, even when you, for all intents and purposes, could do the perfect job. There may still be someone out there who disagrees with a choice that you made, or someone who has a very strong opinion about how something was, either localized or approached, or how a scene played out. And I think that the challenge that I have learned is that being comfortable with, allowing people to have those opinions, but not taking it personally when, we as a team know that we did a good job on something. Trying to maintain that and not take those things personally, I think was the first big lesson that I had to learn, especially when, you put a lot of yourself into these shows too. You really, your view on things like what is, compelling from an action or a storytelling standpoint, a lot of that falls on the decision making that comes with that type of stuff, from top to bottom. So the responsibility of trying to do a good job and then having those moments where it's like, damn, I feel like I did the best that I could here, but why does such and such not like this? Um, it's
Yeah.
just not for everybody.
Yeah.
So I tend to focus on making sure that we do the best job that we can. We appreciate the people who enjoy it. We respect and appreciate the people who are passionate about it, but maybe don't engage with it in the way that we were hoping to. And eventually, at some point, those two things will intersect and we will all come together and find something that everybody enjoys doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And from a director's standpoint, do you have any advice for people wanting to start voice acting?
Yeah, just do it. I think that's the most difficult. The most difficult
Yeah.
part with me is I want people to perform. I think the culture and the internet hasn't helped this. There seems to be a lot of how tos and a lot of roadmaps and ways to
Yeah.
do it. I mean, I have found performers in the most surprising places.
Hmm.
Fate has shifted me into certain spots where I never thought it would happen.
Hmm.
And really, what guides a lot of that is just the passion for performing, right? And if I
Hmm.
can sense that in somebody, and we can work with that and we can find a way to make it work, we usually do. That doesn't happen if people aren't prepared to help themselves. And the way you help yourself is just by pursuing that thing that you're interested in. Make mistakes, learn as much as you can, do the best that you can, be a good person while you're doing that, and have patience as you pursue it. I try not to be too like, dad about it, but like I get that question a lot from actors, and I tell them similar things. It's like, you don't want your open heart surgeon to only have like 5 months of training, right?
It's true.
You
Yeah.
don't want your firefighters and your astronauts and stuff like that. You don't want them to just give up because they
Hmm.
haven't gone to the moon or saved someone from a burning building after a few weeks of giving it a go, right?
Yeah.
There's a persistence to it. And I think if you're able to maintain that persistence while being motivated by a passion to perform, every opportunity you get is going to be like the Super Bowl. And it's through that motivation that you'll learn, very individual ways to stand out as a performer, and you'll find ways to really be unique and memorable. And I think that's the kind of people I want to work with. So I tell people when they want to get into it, do it. However you enter that field, just start doing it, get your bearings, stumble a bit, figure it out, totally fine. But as long as the passion is there, I think you will find yourself on the right route, regardless of how you got started. I think everybody can get there.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Of course. Where can the lovely people find you online?
Yeah. So I'm in a few places. They can find me on, I believe I'm on X or Twitter or whatever it's called. It's underscore Jason Lord underscore. That's my handle on most platforms. I'm usually most active probably on there and Instagram if people want to find me.
Yeah.
And I'm usually just posting silly things. Right now I'm on the Uma Musume train like everybody
Yes.
else.
Let's
I've been
go.
Uma Musume since day one. I would like to add. I didn't just hop on this train. I was there from the beginning. So, but yeah, if anyone wants to talk to me about horse stuff or robots or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I'm always kind of posting silly stuff from time to time there.
Yeah, perfect. All those links will be down below. You can follow me on Instagram at Corky Cosplays, Adam Corky everywhere else, and subscribe to the Patreon. You get exclusive videos as well as behind the scenes content and episodes a day early. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Bye bye.